This is episode 317 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Well, Wally, before we get started this week, of course, I am joining a little differently via Zoom, the wonders of Zoom technology from Colonial Williamsburg, or at least a hotel adjacent to Colonial Williamsburg. And hopefully the technology works well enough.
Yeah, hopefully the colonists had good internet connection there in Williamsburg. So,
well, we're going to test it and find out. And we're on a little family vacation this week. And of course, I was able to watch, as many people around New Mexico and around the country did, as Richard Branson beat Jeff Bezos to space. He did so, of course, from Spaceport America, and it went off without a hitch, I think, to say the least. And it was a big day for the state of New Mexico, a lot of national, international attention. Certainly, it was a major step forward for Spaceport America, and it brought the kind of attention that I'm sure Bill Richardson was ever so hopeful for when he embarked upon this taxpayer-financed project just about a decade ago.
Yes, it's amazing how long it took to get to this point. You know, it was always, I don't know if it was on par with 2 weeks to flatten the curve, but, you know, we were led to believe months or years, and it was a decade. You know, I think it's good that that happened from the point of view of New Mexico. We've sure put a lot of money in. It's certainly good for Richard Branson. I'm glad he went up and came back all in one piece. So now paying customers presumably can do the same. And, you know, we've talked, we'll see. They need some volume to make this thing a good business venture and to make it good for the state of New Mexico. But this is progress, the likes we haven't seen on this project, ever.
Yeah, it definitely was a high risk event, the launch, such kind of lax, and I'm no fan of government regulation, but the idea that the FAA had given a go-ahead for this kind of launch after essentially one or two successful trips up to whether it's space or not, we're not going to get into that whole controversy, but it was spacey enough that I think folks at Virgin Galactic are calling it a huge success. And, you know, I was watching media reports on the major networks, and everybody was pretty excited. They were covering it live. And, you know, of course, there's been a few test launches. There's been some attention given to those. But when Richard Branson, the billionaire, very charismatic guy, puts on a big party and a lot of people show up to it and people really say this is a big deal, it turned into a big deal. Now, let's not kid ourselves. This wasn't a paying customer flight to space. This is not even the final flight before the paying customers fly aboard Virgin Galactic to space. They have to make this a going enterprise by doing space or near space trips on a regular basis in a safe manner, and have enough customers lined up to do it. So it's good news. It definitely keeps the spaceport front and center and gives Branson a feather in his hat, and makes it more likely that those folks who paid $250,000 and maybe more people will pay the $250,000. But I think they'll be waiting till 2022 before we see those actual tourist flights. There's a couple more flights to go, and it's one of the things the space shuttle struggled with, was getting those flights up in a rapid fashion, living up to the idea of a reusable space module. And I think, it's going to be a challenge as well at Spaceport America. But, I'm sure if you talk to anybody there, you're talking success level 10 out of 10 for that particular event.
Yeah, no question about that, Paul. And, we've heard and I've read a lot. Yeah, the issue is two things. What is the turnaround time between flights and how much does it cost to prepare the vehicle for the next go round? And how many cycles before you have to go to your next I don't know, flight system, your next plane and rocket, for lack of a better word, combo. If it's 3 or 4, that's not going to work. I don't know where their break even is, but I would think it would be, somewhere in the high dozens, if not in the hundreds, for that to be, worth the millions of dollars it takes to put the next unit in play.
Yeah, well, we'll all be watching. It's something that, while the Rio Grande Foundation remains critical of the idea of constructing a taxpayer financed spaceport for $250 million, and doing so for a very speculative space tourist venture, it's something that we're happy succeeded, and we'll be watching the next time around, because I think it's safe to say that we like space at the Rio Grande Foundation. We like pushing the envelope and doing things in an innovative fashion. And while in New Mexico, we can certainly talk about the taxpayer financing aspect, we also have to remember that this is a private venture, by and large, that is in many ways filling in, or at least attempting to fill in the gaps for a government operated NASA program. So we're not going to get the full privatization of space right away, but certainly Bezos and Musk and Branson all competing to get their various projects into space, and doing so successfully. That's a success for the private space market as well. So good news there.
Yeah, absolutely good news. And I was thinking about it. Nevada has Burning Man. So now we have Flying Man or Flying Woman, because I know there were women involved with the flight. And maybe this will get to be the party to end all parties, is to go to Spaceport America, which I would have named it Spaceport New Mexico if I were paying for it as a New Mexico taxpayer, but who's to quibble? And good news, and we'll see how this thing shakes out going forward.
Yeah. So in addition to, of course, that major news event, international news event, the CDC, our good friends at the Centers for Disease Control, came out with new guidelines specifically for kids going back to school this fall in the case